What does his stepping down so quickly say to you?
Well, I think it says that their board is serious about the company and what it needs to do going forward. And reputation is one of the things that they need to guard. And he would be depressing the company's shares, putting uncertainty into that market. And so moving forward under new leadership, I think, is an important part of every board's responsibility to their shareholders.
And now, obviously, there were some pretty significant allegations of sexual harassment at the company. As you were climbing the corporate ladder, did you experience any sexual harassment as you were rising through the ranks in corporate America?
The 80s were a very different time, and many of us in the 1980s did experience sexual harassment. And there weren't as many places to go back then. It was sort of, we took care of each other, we knew who the bad actors were. With like-minded men, we figured it out. But companies have gone so far in the last 20 years to establish the right policies, the right practices. People know where to go if they experience any kind of issue. And it's the company's responsibility to investigate and take the appropriate action.
Do you believe that by putting more women in leadership, more women on boards, that helps solve the issue, or is there more that needs to be done than just putting women in leadership roles?
Well, I do think there's an imbalance of power that leads to these opportunities. And if you drive to gender parity, whether it's at senior leadership operating roles or on boards, you just get a very different outcome in terms of that balance of power, in terms of how things are viewed. I mean, I think there's been many studies that have shown how diversity, it's not just a social issue, it's an economic issue. There was a Credit Suisse research report that said when there are 50% of senior leadership in operating roles are women, you get a 19% increase in return on equity.
Wow.
There was another one by the Peterson Institute of International Economics that said when you go from 0 to 30% women in senior leadership roles, you increase your net revenue margin 15%. So there's an economic benefit to diversity and gender parity in companies.
It's interesting that research and research like it has been out there for a little while, and I wonder if you feel as if there's actual buy-in on that idea. In other words, when companies look to improve their standing in these areas, do they actually believe it's going to increase returns, or is that just a way to get people to go along?
I think many of us have anecdotal evidence that diverse teams make better decisions, have better outcomes, because they're debating the issues. They're getting, they're identifying the elephant in the room. They're not shoving it in the corner, and they're taking better actions. And so we have that. I have that anecdotally. It's great to see studies bearing that out. But it's real. I mean, and it's another side of it is the war on talent, that there are a tremendous number of talented men and women. We're graduating from college at a rate equal to men at 50%. And yet you get, as you climb the company, there are less and less women in senior leadership positions.
And I can sort of understand that, just, again, that work-life balance and trying to deal with all of these issues, which have been an issue for a long time. What surprises me is the boards. This seems like the kind of job, I mean, I'm going to be a little flip about this. You show up a couple times a year, you get paid pretty well.
It's a little more than that, but yeah.
I mean, why is it that headhunters aren't coming to women? Does it feel like there's a finite supply of women who are available for these seats because you can only kind of do 1 or 2 or 3 at a time? I mean, it seems like a great gig.
It is that boards are looking for someone who is going to fill a skill gap. So, for instance, do they have a technical background or an international or a government background or a sitting CEO or CFO? So most boards have moved to a skill-based inventory as they take a look at their people. And so what comes open may not always be something that they can match up. On the other side of it is, as you get more women into senior leadership positions, there's a larger number of women who have the skills, have the background to do that. That's why in order to get more women on boards, you really need to increase the number of women in senior leadership positions.
Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the role that activism plays in all of that, because obviously you famously defended DuPont against Nelson Peltz when in the proxy fight a few years ago. And there have been studies that show that activists do tend to make boards more male and that they tend to target women disproportionately. Now, do you think that activists are missing the picture when it comes to the returns that are being generated, or do you think that they see it and are choosing not to do that?
I do think that many of the women who have taken over companies in the last 5 years have been asked to take on big challenges in terms of transitioning the companies to a different place. And anytime a company's in transition, there's the opportunity to bring in short-termism as the answer, as opposed to creating a long-term, more stable, more resilient enterprise. And you saw a lot of women take on these challenges, and that creates opportunity for activism. It does. In today's day and age, everybody's looking for more return. It creates that opportunity. I don't think you should shrink from it. I think companies need to reinvent themselves in order to be relevant in the years to come. And so it's just part of the fabric, activism, and it's here, and people have to deal with it. And I think that the more we talk about it, the more transparency we bring to it, I think it'll come out in a better place.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.